Hey, how's it going there? Can you believe that Emily McCarthy got chapter 2? And then she sent it to me and it ended up on my mailbox. And it's funny, I put it right back into the book and now I'm ready to read it. So I guess we'll give it a try. Let's do it. Chapter 2, Whales, Sails, and the Waterfront Trail. Dear Wishing Tree, my name is Trevor and I was supposed to be a camper at Merrowvista for the second time this summer. Last year was one of the best summers I've ever had, even though Merrowvista was all so new. I remember driving up with my parents on the first day and being so nervous that it would be weird, but it ended up being really cool. I met so many people and did so many cool things that I couldn't stop thinking about it the entire school year. I really, really liked the waterfront, especially the sailboats, because I had never been on one before. I don't live by any water, so I haven't gotten to sail since last August. I'm good at it too. The waterfront person, Chloe, told me that I was really close to getting my skipper's license, and I only had the interest group 2 times. I was really looking forward to trying to get it as soon as I got to camp this summer, and it stinks that I won't be able to. Is anybody going to be using the waterfront this summer? Do you think that the boats are going to get rusty without anybody using them? Has the camp put in the dock yet? Do you think that I can get my skipper's license if I come back next summer? I just hope I don't forget what I learned. Your friend, Trevor from Mahoosic. Danhole Pond is no ordinary New Hampshire watering hole. Sculpted by the volcano that erupted there 200 million years ago, the caves and tunnels that make up the bottom of the pond had become home to a very peculiar family of whales. Their ancestors had been carried there by the glaciers that had shaped the valley thousands of years ago, and ever since, the whales had lived peacefully among the nooks and crannies of the pond. The wishing tree had been told by its nosy roots of their existence decades ago, but the tree was not completely fluent in Whalian until recently. After receiving Trevor's letter, the tree knew that the whales needed to hear it. So remembering the deep tones of the Whalians, he shouted down the hill towards the waterfront. Okay, so it says here that this is translated into English from Whalian. So here we go. Good morning down there. Can you hear me down the hill? I can't believe you live in that water. Just thinking about it gives me a chill. It was so good to see you jump during the valley's awakening. I think you even splashed me up here. You hit the water like an earth a-quakening. Here up on my stoop, a letter I want to read to you with care. Please excuse my awful accent. My Whalian is far less than fair. The whales heard the tree as their voice was far from ignorable and had swam cautiously towards the dock. There were 19 whales in total in their pod, ranging from the oldest, Finson, who had just the week before turned 214 and was about the size of 3 school buses put together, to the smallest of them all, Blubson, who was roughly the size of a very small car. His brothers and sisters were almost double his size and constantly poked fun at him for it. You see, where most whales prided themselves on being able to swim in a straight line, Blubson's stunted growth and faulty fin resulted in his swimming patterns to be more unique. Where his family and friends could travel directly to their destination, propelling themselves with their huge fins, Blubson would swim in figure-8s, zigzags, and loop-de-doops, resulting in a much longer journey. Blubson's aunt, Blubbles, who was also significantly smaller than the rest of the pod, told him, "You know, when I was a young calf, I was just as small as you were, maybe even smaller. Whales our size can fit into places others can't, like caves and crannies that make up this pond. Places that your brothers, sisters, and cousins can't go." Auntie Blubbles had shown Blubson the secret network of caves that only they could reach. There, Blubson collected small artifacts of camp that had dropped in the water. Goggles, buddy tags, and a spray-painted tennis ball were the most notable items of his collection. While he was thankful to have his own space, Blubson still wished that he could just be as strong and fast as his peers. He lingered in the back of the pod as the wishing tree read Trevor's letter from the meadow. After they were finished, the tree sang out, "Now that you've listened, I have something to show. There are parts of the best self that only campers do know. Watch them, observe them as they swim and they paddle. Watch them flock to the waterfront, birds of a feather, like herds of cattle. I challenge you to learn from them all that you can. The bell has rung. Get to it, whales of the whole that is Dan." The roots underneath the tree began to twist and tremble as the roots deep under started to communicate with the shrubs and blueberry bushes at the waterfront. You see, the wishing tree is more than just a tree who can talk. Their memory is so sharp that they can create visions of campers in the valley, almost like a movie playing out in real time. Appearing as if out of nowhere, the tree conjured up the vision of a lively day at the waterfront for the whales to observe. Ghost-like campers could be seen flipping their buddy tags, strapping on their PFDs, and much to the whales' interests, completing distance swims. The whales watched in awe, as they had never seen humans doing such interesting things. They had always been afraid to approach the shore, but seeing the fun that the campers were having, they decided to jump right in. Before they knew it, the whales were playing volleyball, smacking the ball over the net with their tails as Finson kept score nearby. The younger whales immediately started planning for the distance swims, with the strongest and fastest whale, Scrombo, bragging that he would be the first to complete the trident, the longest and most difficult of all the distance swims. The whales were all very interested in the beads that hung on the campers' buddy tags, which with each distance swim earning the campers a different bead. For birch, campers were given a green bead, for outpost, a blue bead, for strawberry, a red bead, for the triangle, a yellow bead. Swimming the diamond gets you a flower bead, and campers, or whales, that complete the trident proudly hang a red heart from their buddy tags. Blubson had retreated to his personal clubhouse in the eastern side of the pond. He sighed as he looked at all his treasures of campers' pasts. He knew that he could never keep up with the rest of his friends on the distance swims, and his tail was far too short to play volleyball. Aunt Blubble saw that he was missing and went back to check on him in the cave. There, she saw Blubson fiddling with a pair of green goggles in the sand. "Blubson, my dear boy, what are you doing down here? You have to see what they're doing with the chocolate pudding on the shore. They're eating it without hands and making an awful mess." "I don't know, Aunt Blubs. I don't think that I can do anything that the campers are doing. I can't keep up on the distance swims because of my fin, and I'm worried that they're going to think that I'm the volleyball if I try to play. Scrombo told me that I should try diving for treasure. I think he was joking. I mean, I'm a whale. Diving for treasure really wouldn't be that hard." Aunt Bee led Blubson out of the clubhouse and back towards the shore by his fin. He lagged behind, as he usually did. The rest of the whales were busy doing their first distance swims, racing and darting between the rocks near Birch. Out of the corner of his eye, a sailboat gracefully glided by. The camper on the boat was smiling and laughing as he used the wind to steer the boat. It seemed like magic to Blubson. His whole life, he never imagined ever going outside the water. He swam towards the right side of the shore as fast as he could, and it just so happened that one boat was left tied up on the edge of the shore. Scooting up the bank, Blubson grabbed the rope in his mouth and struggled to pull the boat into the water. Eventually, when the boat was floating, Blubson jumped out of the water with all his might and hoisted himself onto the bow. The surface of the boat was slippery, leading Blubson to slide right back into the water again. Scrombo and the rest of the whales chuckled in the distance as they admired their new shiny green beads. "There's no way he'll ever get that thing to work," scoffed Scrombo. "Besides, whales aren't supposed to sail." 2 weeks later, the entire pod of whales gathered to watch Scrombo attempt the trident, as he had flown through all the other distance swims. Hanging off of his tail was a multicolored bracelet with all of the beads glinting in the sunlight. The wishing tree watched from up the hill, eager to see the progress that the whales had made. When it was finally time, Finson blew out an enormous geyser of water from his blowhole as the signal for Scrombo to start his trident attempt. While he started out very strong, just an hour in, Scrombo was struggling to keep up his stamina by the time he reached Strawberry Point. The wishing tree realized that Scrombo was not going to make it, and worried that he would be stuck out there. Just as Scrombo was about to throw in the towel and call it quits, a certain whale on a sailboat came flying across the pond. Blubson masterfully worked the sail with a series of ropes and pulleys he had found deep in the reaches of the pond. Tying the various ropes to his fins, Blubson had learned to captain the ship. With speed and grace, Blubson careened the boat towards the struggling Scrombo. He threw a rope down to Scrombo, who took it in his mouth and caught his breath. But how, Blubson? Aren't whales supposed to stay in the water? How can you possibly be sailing? You don't even have hands, Scrombo sputtered out. Blubson looked towards the ropes and knots he had looped around his fins. You know, you can learn a lot by just watching, and it really looks like you could use a spotter right about now. Are you ready to finish this thing? Scrombo smiled a huge whale smile and nodded his head sheepishly. Blubson pulled on the sail from the bow, steering the boat towards camp. Taking a much slower pace and making sure to take rest breaks, Scrombo and Blubson worked together to complete the rest of the trident. The wishing tree took note of the sailing skills that Blubson had developed in the past weeks. Almost as if it was floating on top of the waves, the boat easily maneuvered alongside the steadily swimming Scrombo, working the sails like a race car driver would drive a car. The little whale sailed in figure eights, zigzags, and loop-de-doops around the pond. The nautical patterns that he had come to know so well from years of lopsided swimming became the perfect way to show off his new sailing skills, and the rest of the whales noticed as they splashed and cheered. After another hour of tireless work, Scrombo finally made it back to the dock, with a sailing whale following close behind. The entire pod rushed a crowd around the boat. The old and ancient Finson was the first in line to say, "Oh, dear boy, I in my entire life have never seen anything quite like that. You've shown that there is truly nothing a whale can't learn. Hear, hear, young Blubson, to the whale who sails, to the first of his kind. And to Scrombo the Strong, the first whale to earn this coveted heart bead for completing the trident, yet another remarkable feat." With that, Finson carefully placed the bead on the bracelet hanging off Scrombo's tail. The tree had teared up a little bit watching the whole event take place, and as soon as the heart-shaped bead was on Scrombo's necklace, he sent the roost to drop something in the water. As the laminated card hit the surface of the pond, the exhausted Scrombo swam away from the bead ceremony to retrieve it. He swam back to the bow of the boat where Blubson sat and handed him the very first skipper's license earned by a whale. Blubson blushed as Scrombo sent a huge burst of water into the air in celebration and in gratitude. The wishing tree bellowed, "You, young Blubson, congratulations on your certification. The way you carve and shape the waves, it fills me with deep elation. You've learned more from the campers than anyone else in your pod, and for that, we, the tree, salute you. If we had necks, we'd be sure to nod." That night, the stars above the A field had just started to become visible above a cloudless sky. The sun had set just minutes before, and now the valley had been blanketed in a dark blue twilight. The dew had started to form on the grass while the crickets chirped their songs. The wishing tree sat happily in the meadow, reflecting on the whale's accomplishments. "Well, I guess we have found our first artifact," they muttered happily to themselves. Using the rocks that surrounded them, the tree conjured up a mirror copy of Blubson's skipper's license out of stone and placed it gingerly on the stoop. The roots, already knowing the stone's destination, pulled it underground while it traveled under the AC and the A field towards the fire circle. The trees around the circle were some of the oldest in the valley and had been waiting for years for the awakening to occur. When the stone arrived, one exceptionally large tree gently took it from the roots and up into its branches. Reaching into the circle through the gap between the green metal roof and the benches, the tree placed the artifact on the far left side of the benches, where the campers from Blueberry, LBC, Whitecap, Moosilauke, Mahoosuc, and Tri-Pi would have usually sat. There, the stone sat in the Pioneer section, waiting for the other artifacts to arrive. The 6 other sections of the circle sat empty, but the wishing tree had plans to change that. They went to sleep, dreaming of what was to come tomorrow. End of chapter 2. Hey, well, that was a good one. Well, thanks for being here. If I find another chapter, if it somehow gets to me through one of my friends or in some other magical way, I'll be here next week to read it for you. Y'all have a good one. We'll see you soon.
On the loose to climb a mountain, on the loose where I am free, on the loose to live my life the way I think my life should be. For I've only got a moment. this whole world left to see. I'll be looking